immutability. Does anybody know what that means? Yeah, he doesn't change. The way he is today is the way he was 1,000 years ago. He's exactly the same. He has not changed. The things that he says are an abomination then are an abomination now. The things he wants out of our life then are the things that he wants now. I was going to teach another lesson. I studied Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for my Sunday school lesson. And if you've ever taught Sunday school, I think maybe you'll know what I'm talking about. I studied and I tried to put something together, and it just, after 3 days, there was nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And I thought, God, apparently you want me to change what I'm talking about. And so I did. And it just so happened, this was Thursday morning. On Friday morning, I was talking to a friend who was making a long trip, and he was telling me about his experience on that trip with God. And that God was speaking very specifically to him about being consistent, about having a routine in life. And I thought, that's exactly what he talked to me about on Thursday. I find it interesting how God works like that. Today will be a very simple thought. I've been in good Bible-believing churches for 46 years. Now, I know I don't look old enough to have been in good Bible-believing churches for 46 years, but I have. In that time, I might have, but I can't specifically recall times that I heard somebody teach on this subject. Even though God thought it was important enough to talk to David about it as they were talking about Solomon. I believe it is a character trait for life that we should hone and work diligently to be this way in order to see the bountiful blessings of God at the end of our life. There are so many things in life that we don't reap from tomorrow. Sometimes it's a lifetime before we reap from the actions that we do. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes I sin and I reap something right away. But I think this is one of those things that we reap in time. You that know me know I love basketball. Played high school basketball, college basketball, basketball in the military. Absolutely love basketball. Today's players are very athletic. I mean, they're really athletic players, great basketball players, but they generally are woeful, lacking in the fundamentals of the game. When I was in high school and college, the coach would show us endlessly how to box out. Get somebody behind you and box them out. I don't see players doing that a lot today, especially if you're a fan of Memphis State. They don't pass with fundamentals. We were told exactly how to pass. Now you see all kind of, now when these passes today work, oh man, it looks great. Except for all the turnovers that the bad passes cause. We forget that. I'm talking about things that are fundamental. Things that will help us in life. What I'm talking about today is a fundamental thing. And I don't know that we spend a lot of time thinking about it. Solomon did not retain constantly this fundamental thing that God talked to David about. And he paid the price. What happened to Solomon at the end of his life? He went after Ashtaroth and all the other gods because he didn't do what he was told that he should do. Turn to 1 Chronicles chapter 28. 1 Chronicles chapter 28. I'm going to go over a lot of the passage. I'm not going to read it. I'm going to give you a summation of the first 6 verses. And chapter 28, verse 1, David is assembling the leaders of Israel. In verse 2, David is talking about his heart's desire to build a house for God, the temple. In verse 3, God says, but you can't build it, David. You are a man of war. I will not allow you to build it. Verse 4, he says that God made me king over all this. Don't even understand why, but he made me king. Verse 5, and God also chose Solomon. Verse 6, he says, it's Solomon that will build the house. Now, verse 7 is where I want to start reading. Moreover, I will establish his kingdom forever, if he be constant to do my commands and my judgments as it is this day. Therefore, in the sight of all Israel, the congregation of the Lord, and in the audience of our God, keep and seek for all the commandments of the Lord your God, that ye may possess this good land and leave it for an inheritance for your children after you forever. Let me ask you, did his kingdom last forever? No, it didn't. Okay. I wonder why. God said it would, if he be constant. Verse 9. And thou, Solomon, my son, know thou the God of thy fathers, and serve him with a perfect heart and a willing mind. For the Lord searcheth all hearts and understandeth all imaginations of the thoughts. If thou seek him, he will be found. But if thou forsake him, he will cast thee off forever. Take heed now, for the Lord hath chosen thee to build an house for the sanctuary. Be strong and do it. David had everything that God told him that he would need to build the temple, to build the house of God. He had the pattern, he had the blueprint from God, and exactly what to do. He had all the material that David had been collecting probably for years to build the temple. God provided the person, Solomon, to lead in building the temple. There was nothing to build exactly what God wanted and for it to last forever, except for one thing. Would the man, Solomon, do what he was instructed by God to do? Would he do it? Look at verse 7 again. Solomon is told that his kingdom will be established. Established is made sure, made strong, long-lasting. If, man, I always hated that word when my father or grandfather says, we'll do this if. I knew I was going to fail the if. It wasn't going to work. If he be constant. Constant means fixed, firm, opposed to being fluid and wishy-washy, and a little bit here, but not a little bit there. Solomon, will you consistently do the commandments of God? Will that be what you do all the time? It's not asking him if he'll be perfect. I don't see any perfect people in here. Well, maybe. It's from this phrase that I want to build this lesson. If he be constant. Are you? One of the greatest things that we can do in life, this is coming from an old man whose personality was probably a lot different when I was a young man. Right? No? It's one of the greatest things we can do in being a Christian, a friend, an employee, in guiding a family, in being a husband, in being a father, in being a wife, in being a mother, is to be constant. Consistently do the commands of God. Be fixed. Be firm. Don't be fluid. In my 46 years of being in Bible-believing churches, I've seen hundreds and maybe thousands get saved, get busy serving God, following God, but didn't remain constant, consistent. So many I know don't know where they're at today. This is an important thing for us. I want people that knew me when I was 20, the day that I'm in that casket. He was consistent. He was constant for the Lord. Consistency is often overlooked in life. But in my view, it is one of the most valuable character traits that we can have in a long life. When it comes to serving God, be consistent. Ben and Dan, be there where you're at, serving Him 50 years from now. Be consistent. Be constant. And us old folks, Carl, now I know I look a lot older than Carl. We're about the same age. Now's not the time to give up when we see the finish line. Keep running strong. Be constant. Be consistent. As we serve our families, guys, let us be consistent. And I make no mistake in saying, guys, as we serve our family. That is what we do. We may be the head. We may be ultimately in charge. But we serve our families. We know that we will not be perfect. But perfection was never requested. Being constant was what God said. That is what we need. I played baseball in high school, in junior high and high school, and I was the leadoff batter on the team, played shortstop. I forget where we were playing, but I got up to the plate, and the first pitch of the game was about that far outside. I knew my strike zone pretty well. I was a decent hitter. And looked at my coach and said, "That's all right. Come on, Jeff." Mac Thornton, I forget him. I called him up 3 months ago. Love that man. Get in there again. So I got in again. The next pitch was in the exact same place. And it was at least that far outside. Called it a strike. Oh, man. An 18-year-old Jeff doesn't handle that very well, I could tell you. I think I ended up walking. And the next batter, Nicky Latanos, who was the second batter, they called the same pitch. Anyway, we got through our inning, and they come into bat. And they called the same pitch against them, or our pitcher, that far outside. Our coach, at the end of the first inning, he called us all together, and he said, "Listen, guys, it's pretty obvious that outside pitch is a ball, but he is calling it a strike. I don't want to hear any complaining from any of you, because he is being consistent. And that's all we can ask of him." The rest of the game, we didn't think about it. That consistency was a bit, when we understood what he was going to do, it was a benefit to us. The position I had before I retired, did I tell you I'm retired? I think I tell everybody about once a week. I had to often terminate people. Hated it. Worst part of my job. Sometimes, for no reason, we were laying off swarms of people, and I had to call and let them know that they were being terminated. Sometimes I fired people for cause. I can do that. If I know they deserve it, I can do that. I was surprised at how many people that we fired for cause, and we had the goods on them, would sue. Happened all the time. All the time, I was either in front of a state employment board arbitration committee or going to court to let them know what we did. They would ask me, tell me the process that you went through to terminate this individual. And I would say what I did. I would tell them what the company expectation was, and I would give them documentation around those expectations. I would tell the employee how they specifically violated the expectations. And then I would go through the points that we used to get to this point, corrective action notices and all those type of things. And then I would tell them, then I would let them know they weren't consistent with the plan that we had, and therefore, in accordance to law, we are going to terminate you. Every time but one. Every time the arbiter or the judge would say, you followed a very consistent pattern, it looks like, and you have operated according to the law. I won't tell you about the one guy. I caught him stealing money, and they let him get by with it. Ooh, I was mad about that one. In this lesson, I want to look at what we should be consistent in, why we should be consistent, and how we can be consistent. Look at verse 7 again. What should we be constant, faithful, consistent in? The commandments of the Lord. I want to have in my life as routine that I am a follower of what this book says. When my children think about me when I'm dead and gone, this is what I want them to think about. Dad followed the book. He did what the book said. He was consistent in following the book. I think it's very important that as dads, as leaders, that those under us know what we're going to do, that we don't surprise them. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I had taken over as a division vice president of a pretty large part of the company I work for. And I was having a meeting with all those that were leaders under me. And we were all flying to San Antonio, Texas, to have a meeting. I gave them an agenda. I told them we'd meet at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is the room, etc. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm standing in the front, and 15 of the 20 are right here. And I tell somebody in the back, go lock that door back there. 5 people had not made it on time. And at about 3 minutes, we start hearing, I said, ignore them, listen to me. And I talked to them for probably an hour with them out there. You say, why do you do that, Jeff? Because any meeting I had in the future, I never had one person late, ever. They knew what was expected of me, and they did it. I'm saying it is a wonderful thing when we are consistent and those that are under us know what to expect out of us, because our life is nothing but consistency. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. It does to me, and it made a lot of sense then. Where we work, Brother Mike, where you work, your life ought to be a life of consistency in following the commands of God, because you are creating a picture about God and about your life in their minds. The same thing in our families. I want my family to know what Jeff is going to do. I want them to know how I'm going to react to certain situations. If I witness to people that know me, and they know that I am a consistent Christian, are they more apt to listen to me? Yes, they are. But if I'm inconsistent, I guarantee you, they don't want to hear anything I have to say. Look at 1 Chronicles chapter 28 again. Sometimes the most fundamental points are the hardest things to get across. I want us every day to I ought to be able to know Dave is consistent enough that I know how he's going to respond to situations of life, and I think I do. 1 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 7, and it says also, he talks about not only commandments, but judgments. What in the world is God talking about there? That he wants Solomon to be constant in following the commands of God and the judgments of God. What is a judgment? It is the process of understanding the facts, examining the facts, and then ascertaining propriety and justice. Making decisions with justice as the overriding, controlling factor of our decisions. You know, we determine judgments and justice with our families and what we tell them we will, as a family, do, and what we won't do. And every family here probably is a little different in those regards. But in my family, I made a justice decision, a judgment, that there will be spanking offenses. The first time I had to spank Linda, it changed her. No, Linda's my wife. I am teasing, folks. I am teasing. There will be spanking offenses. That's a judgment that I made. In our home, I will have justice with love, but fully with justice. If you lie, our kids knew they were going to get a spanking. Just the way it is. You lie, you're getting a spanking. And there were some others like that. That's the judgment that I'm talking about. You know, kids pick up on stuff very easily. They know when somebody is the favorite, don't they? They know who that is. Who is the favorite, Keturah? Letting one child get away with something that you couldn't get away with creates injustice. Do you feel it, Keturah? Employees pick up on injustice quickly. I think it is part of the big problem that we see in our society. Think about the political class, the Congress, and all that. Rules for thee, but not for me. I dabble in the stock market quite a bit. If I did insider trading, I would go to jail. But not Nancy Pelosi and many of the others who have gotten rich. Rules for thee, injustice, and not for me. My sister was the lead investigator for the DA's office in Madison County, Alabama, where Huntsville's at. And in her position, she had an unmarked police car. And we were down there, and she asked if I wanted to go to the store with her. I said, sure. Jumped in the store. Man, I had to hold on for dear life. I thought, what are you doing? She said, oh, it's not a big deal. If they stop me, I just show them my badge. What? As a police officer, you should be held to the highest standards, not the lowest standards. Justice in a family, and not injustice. It's prevalent throughout all of our society. Mothers and fathers in here, we need to make sure that we're careful in these matters, that we're constant in having right judgment, that we're consistent in having right judgment, that rules apply not only as the father, not only to my wife and kids, but to me. They apply to me too. Kids, you can't watch that type of stuff on television. It will never come on this television until you go to bed. You see what I'm saying? What's good for them is good for me. And that's what God is telling Solomon. Right judgment. If you have a special time with one child, Phil, make sure you also have that with Keturah. We must consistently do the commandments and judgments of the Lord. Consistently. Number 2, look at verse number 8. Why should we be consistent? Verse number 8. Now therefore, in the sight of all Israel, the congregation of the Lord, and in the audience of God, we should do right, do things consistently, because people are watching. People see. You know, children have a superpower. Whether you believe it or not, all of them have a superpower. They have the ability to hear what you don't think they're going to hear. And then they have the ability to not hear what you want them to hear. It's a superpower that they have. And they always seem to be able to see, my kids could see me at exactly the wrong moment every single time. They know when I'm not being consistent. But when we are consistent and live a life in front of our family and our friends that are following the commandments of God and the judgments of God, it will have a lasting effect. It just will. It will. Well, Jeff, prove it. What did Isaac learn from his father Abraham? He learned many things, I'm sure, but this one thing he learned. Isaac learned this from Abraham. Jehovah is God. He learned that. What did Jacob learn from Isaac? He learned that Jehovah is God. So it went from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. And now 3,500 years later, their offspring, the children of Israel, and I'm not saying they're saved if they haven't trusted Jesus, but I'm saying they know that Jehovah is God. 3,500 years later, the consistency of Abraham is paying off. And our consistency will pay off a lifetime in those that we love and know. My mother worked, I love my mother. You guys don't know. She sits usually on the back row if it's not already taken. She used to be about that tall, but I think she's about that tall now. 88, be 89 years old here soon. Learned so much from her. She worked at a dry cleaners for 50 years. 50 years. The summertime in Memphis in a dry cleaners is not a great place to be, I can tell you. She originally took the job in 1968. She was going to raise some money, or save some money, so that she and me and my siblings could go to England and see her parents, my grandparents and my uncles and my aunts and my cousins. And she did that. Worked about a year and saved up enough money to do that. And then she came back and was not going to work anymore. But she decided to keep on. 50 years later, she retired. Well, let me tell you what she did. Never made much money. Never a lot of money in the dry cleaners. I can remember she'd get her check every Friday, and we'd go with her to the bank, and she would take out $2 or $3 and put it in savings. The next week, she may have $4 that she could put in savings. She did that for 50 years. She would skin me alive if she knew what I was going to tell you right now. But that lady, by doing that, her whole life has saved hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Consistency is rewarded many years later in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. And it taught me something. Like Isaac learned from Abraham. I realized, wow, if I do that all my life, wow. And because of that, retirement's good. Why should we be consistent? Others are watching. Dave, your kids are watching. Terry, your kids are watching. Our kids are watching, Carl. How can we be consistent? Look at verse number 9 and 10 in 1 Chronicles. This is how we are consistent. And thou, Solomon, my son, know thou the God of thy fathers, and serve him with a perfect heart and a willing mind. Go down to verse number 10. Take heed now, for the Lord hath chosen thee, Solomon, to build a house for the sanctuary. Be strong. We need to know God if we're going to be consistent. Follow God. We need to serve God. I want nothing more in life to be a servant for him. And we need to be strong. Let me have just a little aside here, and I want to talk to the men. There is a dearth of strong men in our country. There is. I have never seen such femininity among men. Men afraid to take the lead, to be strong, as God told Solomon to be. I'm not talking about being a brash young man, a man that is loud and boisterous. I'm not talking about a man who can have violence and beat somebody. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm not talking about a man who wants to be self-serving. I'm the man, this is the way it's going to be. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about men who are really strong, truly strong. Men who put God first. That's a strong man. Men who live and will fight if necessary and die for their family. Who will give everything that they have for their family. That is a strong man. A man who may need things personally in life, but will, I need to go out and buy socks. It seems like every time I pull out a sock, there's a hole in it, and I throw it away. But a man that needs those things, but says, you know what? I don't. I want to get something for her. I want to do for her. A man who shuns his needs and gives to his family. Apart from God, his first thought is always his family. That's a strong man. A man that will stand for right, regardless of the opposition. And a man who is willing to stand alone. If everybody's against me, I will stand for right all by myself. That's a man. That's a strong man. That was an aside. I just wanted to say it. Getting back to knowing, and I'll be done in 2 minutes. Getting back to knowing and serving and being strong. Knowing God and knowing about God are 2 different things. I fear there are many young people that go astray from the Christian life after church because they didn't see anyone that knew God. The God of their parents was not real to them. It was just a thing we did on Sunday. I'm saying we need to know God. I can't make my kids or my grandkids know God. I can't make them. I wish if I could, I would. But I can make me know God. And if they see that in me, there will be something in them that will burn within their soul to want to know God Almighty. My entire family knows at 9 o'clock every Sunday morning where I will be. Where will you be, Jeff? I'll be here, getting things ready for church, doing things around here. They know at 10 o'clock every Sunday morning, I have come to church where I couldn't even hardly walk. I was so sick. You say, well, stay home. I can't. I need this. I need what God has for me. I need it in my life more. And the nurse back there saying, you're at church sick? My family knows at 11 o'clock. I have a daughter is just like her mom. I mean, just like her. Just plays games. And she'll know right when I'm sitting up there and I can feel my phone vibrating. She does it to see if I left my phone on ring or on vibrate. She does it because she knows where I'll be. And I want that. When I'm dead and gone, and my daughter is getting ready for church, and 10 o'clock, Sunday morning rolls around, I want her in her heart to say, I know where my dad would have been. I know where my grandfather would have been right now. The more we serve God with consistency, the greater our strength will be for Him, and the greater impact we will make on the lives of others. I just pray we would be constant Christians, constant servers of the Lord, desiring that He would impart from Him into them what He has to me. And the role I play in that is to be that man. And I'm going to be. We're dismissed.
That's how much I need a Savior to take the guilt that brings